Hey, it's Lindsey. I saw Wendy over on Loving It on Keto. I'm pretty sure that I've got the right prepositions in there. Anyway, I saw her do a recipe video just a few days ago. Maybe it was less. How long ago was it? It seems like it's been a fortnight. She did these double chocolate chip cookies that were keto friendly, but because her and her husband Harry have some different dietary limitations with some allergies and things, she decided to create something different to sort of satisfy this craving. And what she did was she made a flour or some kind of a crumb out of the protein sparing modified fast bread that she has, her 3.0 version. And when I saw her do that, my brain went, oh, that's fantastic. I have all the thoughts in my brain right now. I must make some of this power flour. That's what I'm gonna dub it for her. I hope she doesn't mind, but it's Wendy's power flour. I hope she picks that up because I think it's phenomenal. It's pure protein. I mean, it's a little bit of sweetener. It's a little bit of fat with the egg yolk powder or the whole egg powder, as per the way she's currently doing her 3.0 version of the bread. But just like the creativity that she spurned me on to with her recipe and the way her brain works, I am excited. I am jazzed. I have several different ideas coming down the pike, I hope, if they turn out. If they don't, I have done fail videos in the past that I like to bring you along with anyway. So I plan to show you how I make some of this Wendy's power flour and then share more videos with you as I utilize this really cool technique in baking up some yummy treats for this low carb way of life. But first, if you are new here, I am Lindsey. I have been following a low carb ketovore lifestyle for quite a while now. I started out on a couple of different healthy ways of eating with the Weston A. Price Foundation, slow food, nourishing traditions kinds of things, gosh, almost 10 years ago. But in about 2016, I found Trim Healthy Mama, which then kickstarted me off into the regular old keto that was all the craze for so long. And now I have settled into ketovore, which is a low carb, higher fat, and definite significant emphasis on protein way of eating. So if any of those types of things interest you, I have tons of videos, what I eat in a day videos, occasionally a grocery haul. I also have some recipe videos here on my channel. I would love for you to check them out. And if you feel so inclined, I'd love to have you subscribing. And if you don't feel like it, I am all about that choose for yourself life. If you are a returning subscriber, I thank you so much for sticking with me. I am kind of touch and go, and your continued support encourages me greatly. Now let's get on to making some Wendy's power flour. Here I have the egg white bread all baked. I did it on my sheet pan over here, and I lined that with parchment in order to make it easy to pop in and out of the pan. If you've been around my channel, it must have been about 3 or 4 winters ago, I showed a food prep video where I demonstrated the Trim Healthy Mama Wonderful White Blender bread recipe. And I did it, I think, either in a 9x13 casserole dish or in a sheet pan similar to this, so that I could get some even slices. Well, I decided to do this format for my egg bread here because I want it to be very thin, and it just seemed like it would be easier. I don't know. I just did it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cube this up into minuscule little cubes and then put it in my dehydrator. Once they are dehydrated, this is what they look like. Let me see if I can't focus a little bit. So I first try to slice up my protein sparing modified fast bread with my pizza cutter. That was a hard pass. And then I tried using one of our regular chef knives, and that was also kind of a problem. For some reason, I totally spaced on the reality that the bread knife was the best choice for my protein sparing modified fast breads. And I was kind of reverting back to the Trim Healthy Mama way of doing things whenever I make the cereal and the can-do cereal from their Trim Healthy Table Cookbook, and the low carb friendly bread that I make, that I already have a recipe video here on my channel for. But I'll figure it out. You'll see here in a minute. I will dirty several different utensils before committing to the bread knife and realizing that I should have started out with the proper tool. Proper tools make for much easier work. All right, now that I have my proper bread knife, things are going much more smoothly. I'm not having as much tearing and ripping, which is great. I also decided, instead of cubing everything up into tiny little cubes, that it would save me time to just cut them into very thin strips.
about the same thickness. I want to say they are between 1/4 and a 1/2 inch thick, probably closer toward 1/4 of an inch thick. And I'm just going to arrange them here on my dehydrator mats. This is a fruit leather tray that came with my Kasori dehydrator. And when I made the cubes in the other clip that I just showed you, the little cubes had a tendency to fall through the grate of my different, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the words, on my dehydrator trays. That's the word. Found it. So I decided to use the little fruit leather sheet in there, but because these strips are much more solid, they hold better and survive more in the dehydrator. I'm going to load all of my trays into my Kasori dehydrator. The footage here is very blurry, so sorry about that. See if we can fix it. Pull it back. Nope, wrong way. There we go. Are we getting a little bit better? Not quite. Oh, there we are. All focused. I'm going to set the dehydrator to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and my timer will be on 3 hours. Double check. Yes, 3 hours, and we'll start this up, and I will check them as they dry out.
It's the next day, and all of my egg white bread little pieces have fully dried in my dehydrator. We got sidetracked yesterday, so I decided to hold off until today to go ahead and grind these into a powder, and that's exactly what I'm about to do. I have a Ninja blender situation here, so I'm going to pop everything into my tall blender pitcher and see what we come up with. Okay, weird angle, we're going to go with it. Alrighty, so these are all super, super dry, which means they should turn into a lovely little powder for me. They're kind of crumbling as I try to pick them up. I'm probably going to need to grind these down a little bit so that I have more space for my next tray of my dried out bread. That's sufficient. Next. I only had one of these little silicone, or I guess this is plastic, fruit tray mats. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they're plastic, but it did help to keep a lot of the crumbs from the dehydrator, like from dehydrating these bad boys. It sort of helped to keep them from creating a big mess. And I might see if they sell silicone versions since, you know, plastic. Not as big a fan of that. I don't know if this angle is working out for me, y'all. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and blend this for probably a little bit longer than what I have been blending because I do want this to be a very fine powder. So a single batch of the egg white bread only nets me approximately 1 cup of the powder. I mean, it might be closer to 1.5 cups. We'll have to pull it out and measure it. Yeah, I would say about 1.5 cups of flour has been produced from a single batch of the bread. Alrighty, like I said, 1.5 cups approximately, that is a loose measurement, and I think you're going to get a varied volume even if you use the exact same recipe just based on how much loft you're able to get out of it. I could be wrong on the science part of that. I'd have to really think that one through, and I haven't thoroughly thought that piece of the puzzle through. So I don't have any hard and fast understandings of what would vary how much volume of powder you get. So you know, your mileage may vary. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know that every single batch will give you a cup and a half. There are a couple of pieces to this puzzle that I want to talk about. Number one, I fully recognize that this is a lot of work to get this much yield out of a single recipe of the egg white bread. I think that baking the bread, drying it out, I used my dehydrator, and the smaller the pieces, the faster it will go, so it's not going to use as much electricity. And it does do a really good job of fully drying things out without making them over baked. But if you do it in your oven, it might take less time. So it's a several step process here. You've got to bake, then you have to dry out, then you have to grind it, and then you have to figure out what to do with it. So that is a lot of work for a small gain. But the flip side to that is, if you do have allergies to any of the nut flours or the coconut, because I don't believe coconut is technically a nut, it's technically a fruit. So if you have any allergies to those or aversions to them, if you struggle with any of those fiber powders that we use in a lot of various keto baking or low carb baking, if those give you trouble, then this particular powder is a way to avoid all of that. It is high protein, obviously, since it was made from almost complete protein source. And so like there's those valuable substitutions for people who have dairy allergies. The DIY baking blend I make has whey protein isolate in it. And while plenty of people don't struggle with whey protein isolate, there are others who definitely do. And wanting to have something that is completely dairy-free, that is not the recipe for them unless they substitute everything out with collagen. So I will try to remember to link my DIY baking blend video up in the cards. The other piece of that is you have multiple ingredients. You have 6 different ingredients in that baking blend, and if you don't have one of them, or you don't want to invest in all of those ingredients, it can be a little bit easier to say, I have egg whites and I've got the egg white powder because I've been doing that. You don't need the allulose to brown it. I think the texture is improved by it and the color is improved by the allulose, but because you're turning this into a powder again, you don't necessarily need that allulose. Most people have cream of tartar, that's easy to get, and salt. So I really think that this could be a much more, what's the right word? Simplified ingredient list than what like some of these other baking blends are. I don't know that simplified is really the term for it, since this was a very lengthy process. I mean, it was a simple process, don't get me wrong, but it was lengthy. What else? I also don't know if I would get the same results that I've gotten with this if I were to just use straight egg white powder. Like if I was just to use straight egg white protein powder in the applications that I'm trying to use this in, I don't know if I would get the same results or not. That is something that I plan to toy around and just sort of see what works and what doesn't, because I do think that there is something about the chemistry of this having gone through the process of baking and having those various ingredients. I think there's something to that when it comes to using this in lieu of a different flour. I don't know that the same results will be yielded from a pure egg white protein powder replacement. So I'm gonna mess around with this. I've already used it a couple of times. I have found the results, the crumb, the texture of the things that I have done thus far has been chef's kiss. I've loved it. So I'm gonna continue to toy around with this, see what other things I can do with this. Wendy, I'm talking to you, ma'am. This was fantastic and a brilliant idea, especially she mentioned using this for those loaves of egg white bread, protein bread that flop, or that may not have the right shape you were wanting, or the sides cave in and you think, I don't really want to be making toast and sandwiches on this very oddly shaped loaf of bread. So I do think this has some great applications, and it's a great way to use up some of those leftover pieces of your egg white bread if you don't want to make egg pudding, which is usually my go-to. So, all right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you in my next video.